Here's what nobody's telling you about parenting. Silence is power, not the cold, punitive, silent treatment. I'm talking about regulated, grounded silence. The kind that comes from trusting yourself enough to let reality do the teaching. Every explanation, every justification, every time you fill the silence with another lecture about why bedtime matters or why they need to do their homework, you're not teaching them. You're managing your own anxiety, and they know it. So why can't you do it? Because silence feels like failure. It feels like giving up, like doing nothing. So you talk and talk and talk some more. You narrate the consequences before they happen. You explain cause and effect like they're 5 when they're 15. You justify your boundaries like you're on trial. In every single word, you're giving away your power. That's not a riddle, that's neuroscience. That's leadership, that's detachment. Today, we're exploring why you can't stop talking and what happens when you finally do. We're going to talk about why your urge to explain is actually a confession of fear. And we're going to give you permission to stop performing good parenting through constant narration. Because your calm presence is the instruction. Your regulated nervous system is the lesson. And your willingness to hold the space without feeling it, that's the real power move. So let's dive in.
Today, we're tackling something that really goes against the grain, doesn't it?
It really does.
This idea,
Right.
the strategy that feels so, counterintuitive.
Yeah.
We're diving into the surprising power of silence, specifically in parenting, but also, leadership too.
Right.
Talking less isn't neglect. It's actually a form of confidence, authority even.
It's a total paradox, isn't it? Because we usually think, okay, good parenting means talking, explaining, guiding with words constantly.
All the time.
Often, when you rush to fill that quiet space, maybe with justifications or trying to rescue them or just nervous chatter, you're actually giving away your power.
Giving it away.
Yeah. So this deep dive is really about seeing silence as this, incredibly underused tool for things like setting boundaries, teaching self-reliance, all that good stuff. Silence is power, essentially.
Okay, that hits hard right away.
Yeah.
It challenges a really deep assumption most of us probably have. So the mission today, I guess, is to unpack how this silent leadership works. And maybe tackle that fear, the fear that if you're not talking, you're somehow failing or just doing nothing.
Exactly. And we're going to explore why that urge to talk often has, almost nothing to do with actually teaching your child.
And everything to do with what? Your own stuff.
Everything to do with managing your own nervous system. That's what the sources really zero in on. The talking is often an attempt to regulate yourself.
Okay, so let's get into that, this talking trap. Why is it when my kid is, say, having a meltdown or pushing back on a rule, why do I feel that, compulsion to explain, to narrate for the third time?
It's basically anxiety management, pure and simple. The discomfort, maybe it's your child's big feelings, their frustration, or maybe it's just the awkwardness of them, sitting with a consequence.
Yeah, that silence can feel loud.
It can. And it often triggers a kind of fight or flight response in the parent. We feel this urgent need to fix it, to control the situation, or just soothe that uncomfortable feeling right away.
And words feel like the tool for control.
They're the quickest tool we reach for, yeah. We try to talk the situation or the child into complying, into making the discomfort go away.
So I catch myself going on and on, about why they can't have another cookie or what bedtime is now. I'm not really teaching impulse control at that point.
Probably not.
Yeah.
You're more likely just trying to make yourself feel calmer, less anxious about the pushback or the tantrum. That's the core idea. Every justification you feel you have to give, every defense of a boundary that's actually perfectly reasonable, a confession of fear.
A confession of fear. Explain that.
Well, if you feel you need to convince your child that the rule is fair or the consequence is justified, you're sending a nonverbal message, aren't you?
That I'm not sure of myself.
Exactly.
Right.
That you doubt the boundary, that it might be up for debate.
Okay, that's a big one. It really makes you stop and think, hold on. Who is this monologue actually for? Is it for them or is it for me?
And the answer is usually, it's for me. That urge to fill the silence, it almost always stems from your discomfort, your inability to just sit with the tension, not from the child's actual need for, another lecture.
Right. Okay, so if over-talking comes from anxiety,
Yeah.
let's flip it. What about regulated silence? Silence that comes from a place of calm, of confidence. What does that communicate?
Now that changes everything. When you can stand firm, stay calm, your regulated silence sends some really powerful messages, completely different ones.
Like what?
Well, first, I trust you. I trust you can handle this feeling, this situation. Second, okay, you're frustrated. I see that. But your feeling isn't my emergency.
Oh, that's key. Not my emergency.
Yeah, crucial. And third, which is vital for leadership, parent or otherwise.
Sure.
I'm actually regulated enough myself right now that I can step back. I can let reality be the teacher here.
Okay, framing it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see how every anxious word is like, leaking power. If I'm arguing, trying to convince...
You're signaling the boundary is shaky, it's negotiable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Calm presence is authority. Holding your ground quietly signals regulation, confidence. But jumping in to justify, argue, explain again, that just signals desperation, insecurity. You're basically inviting them to negotiate, to push back more.
It's like you're the thermostat for the room, right?
That's a great analogy. You're the head regulator. Yeah. If the thermostat is jumping all over the place, everyone feels unstable. Your job is often just to hold the temperature calmly.
This links right into executive function and what the sources call the cognitive vacuum. I found this part really interesting. The idea that if we narrate everything for them...
We're doing their thinking for them. We really are. Kids' brains need those reps, cognitive repetitions. They need practice filling that mental space themselves to build skills like planning, problem solving, managing impulses, core executive functions.
So when we explain the whole consequence, break down exactly why their choice led to this outcome.
We're essentially doing their cognitive homework. Silence, though. It forces the child's brain to fill that void. They have to connect the dots themselves.
So you don't jump in with the lecture about what went wrong.
Yeah.
And they have to sit there and kind of internally process, figure out the link, the next step, the solution.
Exactly. The discomfort itself becomes the data they process. That leads to real learning, not just surface level compliance because you talked them into it.
And this leads to that other point, the scarcity principle about words.
Yeah, the scarcity principle of words. Think about it. If you're talking constantly, your voice just becomes background noise, right? Like wallpaper. It gets ignored.
Totally tuned out.
But if you're generally more silent, more measured when you do speak, those rare intentional words suddenly carry a lot more weight. They have high value. If you speak, they actually listen because they know you're not just providing like constant running commentary on life.
Okay, it sounds simple when you lay it out like that,
Yeah.
But actually doing it, practicing silence when your kid is melting down or really testing a boundary, that feels like maybe the hardest thing ever for a parent. Why does holding back feel so much like failing?
Oh, it's tough. Because we're fighting some really deep-seated fears. First, there's the obvious one. The fear they just won't get it unless we spell it all out. Repeatedly.
Right. They need to explain.
But underneath that, often, is a deeper fear. It's the fear that silence means we're failing, giving up, being neglectful, and maybe the deepest fear of all, our own inability to tolerate the uncertainty.
Or not knowing.
The not knowing. We can't stand that ambiguity of, will they figure it out? Will the consequence actually land? Will they make the right choice next time? Our talking becomes a way to protect ourselves from sitting in that uncomfortable unknown. We've sort of equated good parenting with constant active intervention.
So we need to challenge that equation.
Yeah.
Silence isn't failure. It's a confident pause, a waiting period.
Exactly. And crucially, this is really important. We have to distinguish between two very different kinds of silence. Because just not talking isn't automatically leadership. This critical distinction between regulated silence and anxious silence.
Okay. How do we know the difference? I mean, they both look like Sarin. Not talking. How does the child know? How do we know which one we're projecting?
It's all in the body. It's the nonverbals. Anxious silence is the kind where you're basically holding your breath, right? You're about to burst.
Yeah, tight jaw.
Tight jaw, maybe shoulders up by your ears, a kind of forced calm. But your whole body is sort of vibrating with the need to jump in. You're simmering. It feels tense.
The classic passive-aggressive silence, maybe?
That can definitely be part of it, yes. Regulated silence, though, feels completely different. It's characterized by a calm body, soft shoulders, grounded feet, maybe slow, even breathing. It feels like a deep exhale. Your physical system is communicating, I'm anchored here. I trust this moment. I trust you.
And kids, They pick up on that instantly, don't they? They're like little experts at reading our internal state, mirror neurons and all that.
Absolutely. They feel the difference immediately. Your energy, your nonverbal communication, that's the loudest message in the room, much louder than your words or even the lack of words.
So your nervous system is basically shouting, whether you speak or not.
That's right. When you hold that regulated silence, the message is, I trust you, I trust reality, I'm not afraid of the struggle you're having. But if your body language is screaming, panic, I need to fix this, I'm about to explode or rescue you, well, then your silence isn't really silence, is it? It's just suppressed panic, and they feel that desperate energy.
Okay. This is making so much sense. Let's get practical. For someone listening who maybe recognizes themselves as, an anxious talker, and they want to try this strategic restraint, what's the absolute first step?
The very first step is just noticing that internal urge to speak. When you feel that compulsion rising up, that need to explain, justify, rescue, just pause, stop, and ask yourself that critical question again. Am I about to say this to help them, or am I trying to soothe me?
That's the pivot point.
That's the pivot. And then, before you decide whether to speak or not, focus on regulating your own body first. Can you soften your jaw? Check your shoulders. Are they tense? Can you take one slow, deep breath? Regulation has to come before effective intervention, silent or otherwise.
Okay, regulate first. Then the goal is often to step back. Let reality teach. This is where it gets real, right? Can you give us a sort of contrast, a clear example?
Sure. Let's take a classic. The child forgets something important. Lunchbox, homework holder, sports kit. You get that call from school.
Yep. Happens all the time.
Okay, so the anxious, over-talking parent, they might immediately launch into action. Frantic callback, maybe lecture the child over the phone, jump in the car, drive to school, narrate the child's failure and inconvenience, all the way there.
Delivering the lunch with a side of guilt trip lecture.
Exactly. They rescue the child from the consequence, essentially robbing them of the learning opportunity. They prevent that cognitive vacuum we talked about.
Right, so the silent, regulated parent, how do they handle that call?
They get the call, they acknowledge, okay, so your lunch is at home. Full stop. Maybe. What do you think you can do? But mostly they just hold space. They stay calm. They let the natural consequence play out.
Which might be?
Maybe being hungry for a bit. Maybe having to eat the, not so great cafeteria option. Maybe having to explain to the teacher about the forgotten homework. Whatever it is, they allow that small discomfort to be the teacher. That feeling becomes a powerful internal data point. No lecture can replicate that kind of learning.
It lands differently because they lived it.
Precisely. Or think about boundary tests. When a child complains about a rule or argues about a consequence you've set, the knee-jerk reaction is often to dive right into that justification spiral, right? Well, the reason I did this is because you did that, and if you hadn't.
Defending the boundary, which, as you said, gives away power, invites argument.
Totally. It becomes a debate. Instead, practice a brief done response. You state the boundary, or the consequence, once, clearly, calmly, and then. Often, just calm eye contact is enough. That's your response when they push or complain. You're modeling regulated leadership, not engaging in anxious back and forth.
So the rule is, if you do need to speak, keep it brief. Be done.
Sure.
No long explanations, no justifications, no repeating the lecture 5 times.
Exactly. Trust the silence, trust the awkwardness even, that discomfort. That's the space where the growth happens. When you're concise, brief, and you don't apologize for holding the line, you actually force the child to do the internal processing. That's where the real learning clicks in. You're not being cold, you're showing deep confidence. Confidence in the boundary, confidence in reality, and confidence in their ability to figure it out.
Wow. Okay, so pulling this all together, the huge strategic value here is seeing silence not as absence, but as a strategic restraint, as regulated leadership.
Yep.
And maybe realizing that the constant talking, it's often just a symptom of our own dysregulation, not necessarily what the child needs.
Absolutely. And the amazing thing is, the moment you start to regulate yourself, that silence often becomes much more natural, less terrifying, more powerful. So maybe the permission we can offer listeners today is this. You don't have to fill every single silence. You really don't.
Yeah.
And you definitely don't have to prove you're a good, competent parent by narrating every detail of your child's life and choices. Sometimes your calm, regulated presence. That is the instruction. That's the most powerful teaching you can do.
That feels like a massive shift. A different way to think about almost every interaction we have day to day. If we're thinking about the long game, the impact on the listener's family, what's the final thought you want to leave people mulling over?
Well, maybe just consider this as you go about your day. If your regulated silence sends the message, I trust you, I trust your capability, and your anxious talking tends to send the message, I really need you to do this or stop doing that so I can feel okay, which message are you actually modeling more often? And what's the cumulative impact of that balance on their future ability to self-regulate, to solve problems, to trust themselves? That balance, ultimately, that might just determine the kind of leader and the kind of parent you truly are.
So let me land this for you. Silence is power, is strategic restraint. When you bite your tongue instead of launching into lecture number 47, you're not doing nothing. You're modeling something they desperately need to see, that a regulated adult doesn't panic when things get uncomfortable, doesn't scramble to fix, explain, or rescue. Because the paradox is, the less you talk, the more they listen. The less you intervene, the more they think. The less you rescue, the more capable they become. You need to know you don't have to fill every silence. You don't have to prove you're a good parent by explaining every consequence, justifying every boundary, or preventing every struggle. Because here's what happens when you stop talking. They start thinking, they start problem solving, and they start owning their own choices instead of waiting for you to tell them what to do. And you stop exhausting yourself trying to control outcomes with words. You stop giving away your power every time you justify a boundary that doesn't need justification. The detached parent doesn't overfunction, doesn't over-explain, doesn't rescue. We trust the process. We trust their wiring. We trust that struggle is data, not danger. And we know deeply, fundamentally, that our calm is more instructive than any lecture we could ever give. So the next time you feel that urge rising, that need to explain, to justify, to fill the silence, pause. Take a breath, soften your jaw, drop your shoulders, because silence is power, and you're allowed to use it. That's it for today, guys. I'll talk to you next time.